Hello, my dear listeners. Before we begin today's story, I want to send a special thank you to three wonderful women whose kind comments truly brightened my day. Maline Dalton from Wareham, Australia, Stella Rubin from California, and Karen Lindsay from Manchester in the United Kingdom. It's amazing to see how far our stories travel around the world. And what about you? Have you told me where you're listening from? Leave a comment. I love finding out where all the hearts that follow this channel come from. Who knows? Maybe your name will be featured in the next video. Now then, let's begin. Hazel Collins gripped the handle of her shopping cart so tightly her knuckles turned white. The fluorescent lights of the suburban grocery store were painfully bright, reflecting off the polished floor and amplifying the tinny Christmas music playing overhead. She was supposed to feel festive, but all she felt was dread. Her phone was pressed to her ear as she tried to weave through the crowded aisle while listening to her mother's cheerful yet subtly guilt-laced voice. "Oh, darling, your cousin Tiffany's wedding photos are just divine. She looks so happy, and she's only 22. It just makes a mother wonder, doesn't it?" Hazel's heartbeat quickened. She knew exactly where this conversation was headed. At 27, she was a successful corporate lawyer. Yet the only thing her family cared about was the empty space beside her at holiday dinners. "Mom, I'm happy for Tiffany," Hazel said, steering her cart around a display of eggnog. "But I'm just picking up a few things before I drive up to the farm. I still have work to finish before the break." "Of course, dear. Just remember your Aunt Carol and Aunt Susan will be there. They've already asked if you're bringing anyone this year. I told them you were too busy saving the world. But they do worry about you being alone." The words hit her like stones. Returning home always felt like stepping into a courtroom where she was both defendant and disappointment. Lost in her anxiety, Hazel didn't see the man standing in front of her. Her cart slammed into his legs. A cascade of canned goods and jars crashed to the floor. Hazel gasped, dropping her phone. The call disconnected. "Oh, I am so sorry," she blurted, scrambling to gather the cans. A hand, large, warm, and impeccably groomed, helped her pick them up. "No harm done," the man said. His voice was a smooth, low rumble. Hazel looked up and froze. He was tall, handsome, with rich brown hair and deep jade-green eyes that crinkled with amusement. His cashmere coat, crisp white shirt, and woodsy cologne made him look like a misplaced movie star wandering through a grocery aisle. "No, there is harm," Hazel muttered, gripping a can of olives like a lifeline. "This is basically my whole life right now, chaotic, stressful, a total mess. And I'm about to go home to a firing squad of relatives who think my career is just a cover for my tragic, lonely existence." She stopped, mortified. She had just confessed her entire emotional breakdown to a stranger. Instead of laughing, he smiled. A warm, slow, disarming smile. "A firing squad, he said, leaning casually against the shelf. "And what exactly do they expect you to bring to this execution?" "A fiancé," she sighed. "Or at least a boyfriend. Someone to prove I'm not hopeless." He studied her with interest. Real interest. Then a daring glint appeared in his eyes. He stepped closer, and Hazel felt his warmth. "I have a proposition for you, Advocate Collins," he said quietly. "My life has been dreadfully boring lately. I need an adventure. And you need a shield." He paused, letting the moment stretch. "Take me. I'll be your Christmas boyfriend." Hazel stared, stunned. The audacity. The insanity. Temptation. "You're insane," she whispered. "Maybe," he said lightly. "But imagine Aunt Carol's face." Hazel did imagine it, and for the first time all day, she felt something other than dread. "Fine," she breathed. "I accept." "Excellent," he said, taking the can of olives gently from her hand. "My name is Brandon." Hazel blinked. "Wait, Brandon what? I don't even know your last name." Her office the next day felt like a safe, rational sanctuary. She paced her Persian rug with a typed contract in hand. If she was doing something reckless, she would at least do it legally. A knock sounded. Brandon entered. Impossibly polished in a charcoal suit, looking like he owned every molecule of air around him. "A contract," he said, amused. "I should have known." "It's called due diligence," Hazel said. "This is a serious arrangement. We need boundaries, confidentiality, expense clauses. You even added a penalty for unauthorized public displays of affection," he cut in with a laugh. "You really don't like fun, do you?" "I like control," she corrected. He skimmed the contract, then looked up with a more serious expression. "I have 2 terms of my own," he said. Hazel braced herself. "First, no research. No Googling me. No LinkedIn. No asking around. I want this to feel real. We discover each other as we go." Hazel's stomach dropped. That was the opposite of how she lived her life. "That's reckless," she whispered. "That's the point." "And the second?" she asked. "The fixed-term clause," he said evenly. "This arrangement ends at midnight on Christmas Day. No extensions." Something inside Hazel tightened. Strange hollow ache. "Agreed," she said quietly. "A sign." Brandon picked up her overnight bag. "One last detail," he murmured, his gaze briefly dropping to her lips. "What's the charming, believable story of how we met?" The black SUV looked absurdly out of place on the muddy driveway of the Collins family farm. The cold winter air smelled of pine and wood smoke. "Ready for the firing squad," Brandon whispered, his hand warm against the small of her back. "Remember the story," Hazel said. "We met at a gallery opening." "A classic," he replied. "I'll try to keep my admiration convincing." Before they could knock, Hazel's mother burst out the door, engulfing her in a cinnamon-scented hug. Then came the aunts. "So, Brandon," Aunt Carol said skeptically, "what do you do?" "I'm in technology," he said smoothly. "Dull work, really. But it gives me time to chase brilliant women who work too hard." Hazel felt heat rush to her cheeks. "And how long have you 2 been together?" Aunt Susan pressed. "Long enough to know I don't want to let her go," he said, pressing a soft kiss to Hazel's temple. Her heart fluttered at the unexpected tenderness. But peace never lasts long at a family gathering. A war cry erupted. Connor and Nolan, the 9-year-old twin nephews, charged around the corner like tiny commandos. Before Hazel could warn Brandon, Nolan launched a rock-hard snowball straight at his perfectly styled hair. It hit with a sharp thwack. Hazel froze. Her mother gasped. The aunts looked scandalized. Brandon wiped the dripping ice from his temple. Then he smiled. A wide, delighted grin. He crouched to their height. "Good job, agents," he said. "But next time check the roof. Better cover. Better angle." The twins stared at him, awestruck. Hazel stared too, bewildered by this unexpected version of him. The man who claimed to be bored had just come alive. Brandon stood, brushing snow from his shoulder. "Well," he said softly to Hazel, "I believe your family's Christmas has officially begun." He leaned back in the armchair, eyes glinting with a dangerous, almost thrilling light. "Where's the armory? I think it's time for a counterattack." Before Hazel could react, Brandon pushed to his feet and casually slung an arm around her shoulders. The gesture should have felt like a shield. Instead, it anchored her in the middle of the delightful chaos unfolding around them. "Come on, darling," he added, voice warm with genuine amusement. "Looks like we just arrived at the front lines." Hazel stared at him, this billionaire tech mogul who claimed his life was dreadfully dull, as her nephews recruited him into their latest mischief. She felt a startled laugh bubble up. How was this happening? The man she expected to keep under control was having the time of his life, and the woman who craved control was suddenly, terrifyingly, enjoying the ride. Eventually, the chaos of their arrival began to settle. Hazel's sister Nancy guided them to Hazel's childhood bedroom, a space Hazel had hoped would have magically expanded over the years. Instead, it held exactly one full-sized bed. "Sorry, guys," Nancy chirped, oblivious to the sudden spike in tension. "The whole farm is packed. You 2 lovebirds won't mind sharing, will you?" "Not at all," Brandon replied instantly. his voice smooth, his hand giving Hazel's shoulder a reassuring squeeze that looked professional to the family but felt far too intimate to her. Once the door shut behind them, the performance dropped. The reality hit them both. The room was small, filled with faded posters and the familiar scent of old wood. The bed, though comfortable, now looked impossibly small. Hazel marched to the window, letting the curtain fall back into place. "Okay. Rules," she said briskly. "Pillows down the middle. No crossing. You take the side closest to the door. I need the window." "Agreed," Brandon said, already slipping off his suit jacket with graceful efficiency that made the room shrink even more. They settled into the bed with the flimsiest barrier in human history between them. Hazel lay rigid on her side, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from the man only inches away. She could hear every steady breath he took. "You're tense, Advocate Collins," Brandon murmured. "I'm not used to sharing a bed with a complete stranger," she whispered. "Ah, but I'm not a complete stranger anymore," he corrected softly. "I'm the man who took a frozen snowball for you. And you're the woman who confessed her deepest professional insecurity in a grocery store." Hazel sighed, exhausted. "I'm tired of the performance," she admitted. "The one I put on every day in the city. And now this one here." "What are you performing in the city?" he asked. "The successful woman. The one perfectly content with her career. The one who doesn't need anything else. But when I'm here, when I see the chaos and the warmth, I feel like I missed the point." Brandon shifted slightly, turning toward her. "I know that feeling. My performance is the invulnerable man, the one who built an empire who doesn't rely on anyone. I bought security. All I got was a very luxurious form of boredom." He hesitated. "I used to build things with my hands. Woodwork. But I stopped when I realized I couldn't control the grain." Hazel felt an unexpected surge of empathy. "I used to draw portraits, but I stopped when the lines weren't perfect." They lay in the darkness, two control-obsessed people sharing truths that had nothing to do with their fake relationship and everything to do with who they were underneath. Hazel's tension slowly unwound. As she drifted toward sleep, her hand slipped over the pillow barrier and landed gently on Brandon's chest. He didn't move. "Good night, Advocate Collins," he whispered. Hazel, half asleep, didn't pull away. She felt his heart beating under her palm, and knew the rules were already beginning to blur. Hazel woke to chaos. Not legal chaos, worse. The smell of burning. She bolted upright. Brandon's side of the bed was empty, but the faint scent of his woodsy cologne clung to the pillow. She raced downstairs and froze. The kitchen looked like a snowstorm had detonated inside it. Flour everywhere. The twins shrieking with joy. Her mother laughing. And in the center of the madness, Brandon, wearing an oversized apron, face smeared with flour, hair dusted white, and looking infuriatingly like he belonged there. "The key is misdirection, gentlemen," he cried, flinging a spoonful of dough at one twin. Hazel gaped. "Mom, you can't let them do this. Look at this mess." Brandon turned, smiling wickedly. "Mrs. Collins, your daughter is suffering from a severe case of adultitis. She needs immediate intervention." And just like that, Nolan flung a handful of flour straight at Hazel. She sputtered, wiping her face. And something snapped. "Oh, you want a war," she growled. Moments later, Hazel Collins, the most controlled lawyer in the tri-state area, was chasing children with a bag of powdered sugar like a deranged pastry chef. Brandon defended himself with a spatula. The kitchen became a battleground. When they collapsed in a heap of laughter on the flour-covered floor, Hazel saw something startling. Brandon genuinely relaxed. Happy. Her aunts entered, froze, stared. "Well," Aunt Carol said. "He's the first man who made Hazel fun." Hazel flushed as Brandon brushed a clump of flour from her cheek, far too gently for a fake boyfriend. The look he gave her wasn't amused. It was admiring, warm, dangerous. That night, Hazel woke to Brandon trapped in a nightmare. His face strained, his body rigid. Lose. Everything fire. Hazel touched his arm softly. Brandon, wake up. You're safe. He jolted awake, terrified, younger, exposed. She coaxed gently, and the truth came out. When he was 16, his family lost everything. Their parents, their home, consumed in a fast, devastating fire. I built my entire life so I would never be vulnerable again, he said. And the only thing I can't control now is this. You. Hazel, moved by instinct and something deeper, wrapped her arms around him. He froze, then held her tightly, as if he didn't quite know how. When they pulled apart, the air between them shifted. Permanent. Dangerous. I shouldn't have told you that, he whispered. You're making me feel things I swore I'd never feel again. Hazel didn't back away. For the first time in years, she leaned toward something she couldn't control. The next day, during the family's chaotic tree decorating tradition, Brandon watched Hazel laughing, directing the twins, relaxed in a way he had never seen her. He was falling for this version of her. Aunt Carol seized her moment. Mistletoe. And suddenly Hazel was in his arms. Just a quick peck, Brandon murmured. But when their lips met, the world fell away. The kiss was deep, consuming, real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, they knew. The contract was broken. The problem was real. Hazel dragged him into the hallway. Brandon, we need to talk. That kiss, this, everything is getting too real. He nodded stiffly. It was a mistake. No, she whispered. It wasn't. That's the problem. If I let myself feel this, I might lose control of everything I built. Brandon stepped back, hurt flickering behind his gaze. Of course. The contract is clear. I apologize for the lapse. Consider the terms reaffirmed, Advocate Collins. I was having too much fun. I'll ensure it doesn't happen again. His voice was cold, professional, but his eyes looked heartbreakingly wounded. And Hazel felt the consequences of the boundary she had just rebuilt, one that suddenly hurt far more than it protected. He turned and walked back toward the living room, leaving Hazel alone in the hallway, clutching the sketchbook. The gift, meant to be a symbol of connection, now felt like a heavy, painful reminder of the beautiful and impossible thing she had just pushed away. The fixed-term clause was reaffirmed, but now it was enforced by pain, not mutual agreement. The tension between Hazel and Brandon had become a sharp, visible thing. They spoke only when necessary, their dialogue clipped and formal, a stark contrast to the easy banter they'd shared just days earlier. The rest of the family noticed the shift, assuming it was the inevitable first fight of a serious relationship. The emotional strain, paired with the cold farm air, took its toll on Hazel. By morning, she woke with a raw throat and a throbbing headache. She tried to hide it, popping painkillers and attempting to join breakfast. But Brandon noticed immediately. His clinical eye, sharpened by years of assessing risk, caught her flushed cheeks and the slight tremor in her hands. You have a fever, he stated with absolute certainty. I'm fine, she insisted weakly. He took her coffee cup out of her hand. You're not fine. You're running on fumes and stress. Before anyone could react, he guided her to the bedroom with an efficiency he normally reserved for billion-dollar negotiations. A quick check of her temperature confirmed it. Fever. Flu. Get under the covers. I'll be back. The rest of the day, the billionaire tech mogul became her brusque, reluctant nurse. His bedside manner was entirely clinical, but his actions were undeniable. He brought her herbal tea, timed her medicines, and ensured she was comfortable. He even canceled a trip into town and stayed nearby, working quietly in a corner chair. He never offered warmth, but he offered care. By evening, Hazel felt better. She stepped onto the back porch and found Brandon wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the falling snow. She handed him a mug of hot chocolate. The doctor is off duty, she said softly. I was just fulfilling the terms of the contract, he replied coolly. I can't have my fake girlfriend collapsing before the term is up. It would reflect poorly on my ability to manage resources. Thank you, Brandon, she said, ignoring the cold dismissal. You were very kind. Silence settled between them. My mother said something today, Hazel murmured. She said she was relieved to see me with you. That I seemed alive. Brandon didn't speak. She thought you were good for me. He turned slightly, eyes meeting hers. Beneath the coldness she saw a flicker. Pain, fear, longing. I'm not good for you, Hazel, he said roughly. I'm a complication. And you made it clear you don't want complications. He stood abruptly. I'm going for a walk. Hazel watched him disappear into the swirling snow. He wasn't just avoiding her. He was running. 10 minutes later she followed his tracks. She found him leaning on the fence line, rigid as the frozen landscape. I need to apologize, she said. No need, he replied. You chose control. Logical. It wasn't logic. It was fear. That made him finally look at her. When you gave me that sketchbook, she said quietly, you saw the part of me I buried. And that terrified me. I've spent my life building a perfect controlled environment, believing it would make me happy. But I'm empty, Brandon. I've been afraid to admit it. And the only time I've felt alive in years was with you. His eyes softened, thawing slowly. You said you were afraid of losing control, he murmured. I was. But being sick today made me realize something. You missed to control himself. You didn't control me. You cared. You were there. And that terrified me even more. She stepped closer. I've been so afraid of falling in love that I forgot the risk of living a life I don't love. His breath hitched. The kiss under the mistletoe, she whispered, was the most honest thing I felt all week. Brandon's hand hovered near her face, his eyes dropping to her lips. If I kiss you again, he warned, voice thick, the contract is over. I know, she breathed. And I don't care. His face inched closer, until two small voices shattered the moment. Mr. Brandon. Aunt Hazel. We found you. The twins came running, dragging a rickety sled. We need a test pilot. The charged air vanished instantly. Brandon cleared his throat. A test pilot. Lead the way. Before following the boys, he gave Hazel a look. Not now. Soon. Christmas Eve arrived, the final night of the contract. The countdown to midnight loomed over them like a shadow. During dinner, Hazel's father stood to give a toast. To the newest member of our family, Brandon. Brandon froze. Hazel's father continued, voice warm and heartfelt. Thank you for making our Hazel happy. She has laughed more this week than in years. You brought our girl back to us. The room applauded. Brandon looked stunned, exposed. The toast wasn't to a performance. It was to them. And both of them knew the truth. They were no longer pretending. Later, in the quiet of the dining room, Brandon touched Hazel's cheek. I don't want to go, he whispered. Then don't, she pleaded. But then the chimes. Midnight. Brandon stepped back as if burned. Thank you, Hazel, he said, voice breaking. It was the best Christmas. And he walked away. Back in her high-rise apartment, Hazel sat in silence. Surrounded by marble and leather, she felt nothing. Work felt empty. Life felt gray. Across the city, Brandon felt the same hollow ache. Both reached for their phones. Both typed messages they couldn't send. 2 weeks passed. Hazel's world finally cracked when she learned her senior partner had taken a bribe to throw a case. The legal empire she worshipped was rotten. Without hesitation, she resigned. As she stepped out of the building, her phone rang. I was wondering, Brandon's familiar voice said, how your resource management is going. I'm thinking of taking a very long vacation, and I need to know if the best legal mind I know is available for a casual cup of coffee. No contracts. Hazel exhaled, smiling. I think I might be available. At the cafe, she told him everything. He listened, not like a CEO but like someone who cared deeply. Then he made an offer. I'm taking a sabbatical. A month, maybe more. No schedules. No expectations. I need a travel partner. Not a relationship, an adventure partnership. It was reckless, beautiful, terrifying. Hazel smiled. I accept the terms, Mr. Brandon. He grinned. Good. Because the flight is tomorrow. A month later, on a Mediterranean beach, Hazel sketched while Brandon brought her wine. She was glowing with life again. She showed him a sketch of a new business idea, a boutique travel agency. It's brilliant, he said. And I might need an investor. He kissed her knuckles. I am an investor, and you are my most valuable asset. Then, with trembling hands, he pulled out a velvet box. I tried to control everything, even love. And the only thing I achieved was profound unhappiness. Hazel, will you marry me? For real this time? Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. 1 year later, Christmas at the farm was pure chaos and joy. Hazel's travel agency was thriving. Brandon stood beside her, happier than he had ever been. He handed her a cocktail napkin, their final contract. We agreed to prioritize chaos, laughter, and genuine affection over control and fear, every day for the rest of our lives. She laughed and kissed him under the mistletoe. Binding for life, he whispered. Their story had begun with a lie, and ended with the truest thing either of them had ever chosen.